They say the mind forgets what the heart can't bear. But what if the forgetting isn't yours? What if the truth you begin to doubt was never lost inside you, but planted around you? Mama remembers the first time I started second-guessing myself. I put the tea in the cupboard, but found it in the freezer. I left the porch light on, but it was off when I came back. Heather smiled gently, said it was okay. It happens with age. Jacob just rubbed my shoulder. Didn't say much, but I saw it in his eyes, the quiet ache of worry, the way he looked at me like I was slowly drifting into the fog. I laughed, at first, tried to make jokes about forgetting birthdays and mixing up the mail. But deep down, I started keeping score. I wrote things down twice, set alarms for everything, watched their faces whenever I spoke. Because, sweetheart, something wasn't right. Not with my memory, but with how they were watching it. Have you ever looked around your own house and felt like a guest in a story someone else was narrating? That's what it became. A house filled with soft corrections, overlabeled spice jars, calendar events that vanished overnight. And the woman I once was, sharp, certain, steady, began to flicker in their eyes like a faulty lamp. She told him I was losing my mind, and he believed her. But tonight, sweetheart, tonight I'll read you the chapter I never dared to speak aloud. Not because I was afraid they were right, but because I was afraid. I was alone in knowing they were wrong. So come closer, pour a cup of tea, and let Mama tell you how forgetting became a weapon and remembering became my quiet act of resistance. Because this isn't just a story about being called crazy. It's about the moment I stopped apologizing for being clear. Dear Jacob, Mama doesn't know where to begin. Maybe with the first time I held you. You were so small, Jacob. Barely the length of my forearm. But you cried with lungs full of life, as if you already knew this world would demand so much from you. From us both. Do you remember the blanket I wrapped you in? The one with the little foxes stitched into the corners. You used to grab the edge of it and shove it into your mouth when you were tired. I never once minded the drool. It meant you felt safe. There were days, Jacob, when I was so tired I could barely stand. I'd prop you on my hips, stir the stew, pay the bills, answer work calls, all with one arm. And every night I tucked you in and whispered, Jacob, you're my favorite reason to keep going. I saved everything you gave me. The macaroni card that said Mama is magic. The clay turtle from 3rd grade that cracked in the sun but still sits on my dresser. Even the note you once wrote in a rush. Sorry I was rude. I still love you. Jay. I've never thrown away your love, Jacob, even when it came in broken pieces. But lately, I don't recognize the way you look at me. Like I'm a question you can't answer. Like you're waiting for me to forget your name. Like you love me but don't trust me. And that hurts more than any diagnosis ever could. Heather said I left the stove on. That I missed your dentist appointment. That I confused the sugar and salt again. But Jacob, I swear to you, I remembered. I wrote them down. I even crossed off dates in my calendar. Still, you didn't ask. You didn't believe. You just watched me slip into someone else's idea of who I am. And maybe I did start to forget. Not the days or the faces, but how it feels to be believed. That kind of forgetting. It comes from the inside. I wanted to scream, don't you know me? Don't you remember the woman who held your fevered body through the night? Who drove hours in the rain when you forgot your cleats for the state finals? Who worked 2 jobs to keep your piano lessons going? But I didn't scream. I sat, and I listened, as Heather spoke to you in that low, serious voice, suggesting I might need help. A facility. Monitoring. And you nodded. You nodded, Jacob. Like you weren't the same boy who once said, Mama's brain is better than Google. So I'm writing this not to change your mind. Not even to beg for belief. I'm writing this so I remember I'm still here. Still whole. Still sharp. Still me. Because if I don't write it down, your silence might convince me otherwise. Love. Mama. You know, sweetheart, there's a special kind of pain that comes when someone believes a lie about you. And worse, when part of you starts to believe it too. It doesn't come like a storm. It seeps in like fog. Quiet. Creeping. It settles into your bones before you even realize how cold it's gotten. Have you ever questioned your own memory? Not because you forgot something, but because someone kept insisting you did. Have you ever stayed silent? Not because you had nothing to say, but because every time you spoke, their eyes said they already made up their mind. I started checking the oven 3 times before bed. Started writing grocery lists twice once for me once in case they asked. I began apologizing before I even knew what for. And the worst part? I started to wonder, what if they're right? That's how doubt works, sweetheart. It doesn't attack you, it whispers. And the people closest to you, they don't need to shout to make you feel small. They just have to stop seeing you. I read once that psychological manipulation doesn't always look like screaming matches. Sometimes it looks like a smile and a concerned tone. A soft hand on your shoulder while they quietly erase the person you used to be. Heather never raised her voice, never once cursed at me. She just moved things, spoke over me, reworded events until I started second-guessing every corner of my day. That's how erasure begins. Not with violence, but with soft edits to your reality. They call it gaslighting. Psychologists say it's a form of emotional control, subtle, persistent. The goal is simple. Make the other person doubt their own mind until they stop trusting what they know to be true. And when it's done under the mask of care, it's even more dangerous. Because the world cheers for caretakers. The world doesn't see the woman who's being erased behind the curtain. Jacob didn't know. Not at first. But that's what hurt most. Not the lies Heather told, but the silence Jacob gave. Because betrayal doesn't always scream. Sometimes it just turns away and says nothing. And Mama wants to ask you this, darling. Have you ever been made to feel like you were imagining things? That your pain wasn't real? That your clarity was inconvenient? Have you ever dimmed your light? Just to make someone else feel more comfortable in the room. I used to think growing older meant disappearing slowly, like fog lifting off a pond. But now I know. It's not time that erases women like me. It's people. People who are afraid of our memory, our strength, our presence. And sweetheart, if you've ever sat in a room and wondered, am I crazy? Let me be the first to tell you, you are not. You are not confused. You are not broken. You are simply standing in a house where someone else keeps turning off the lights. That morning, sweetheart, Mama nearly poured orange juice into the coffee pot. It sounds silly, doesn't it? But it made Mama stop for a long while, holding the bottle in one hand and the pot in the other, asking herself, is this how it begins? It wasn't the first time something like that happened. The week before I left the stove on. A few days earlier, I put my reading glasses in the freezer. Heather laughed it off. It happens to all of us, she said, smiling sweetly. But her eyes always lingered just a second too long. Like she was watching, measuring. And Jacob, he started double-checking things behind me, correcting what I'd said even if it wasn't wrong. Walking into rooms I'd just left as if confirming I hadn't forgotten anything. They didn't say it out loud at first, but I could feel it. That quiet nudge, that creeping shift from Mama is tired to Mama is slipping. The whisper I used to hear in my head, it had begun to echo in theirs. Then came the day I overheard them. Heather's voice, calm, controlled, sharp, like the edge of a teacup. She nearly burned the tea kettle again. Jacob, this isn't just forgetfulness anymore. Jacob's sigh broke something in me. I don't know what to do. I can't watch her lose herself like this. Maybe she needs more than just us. There was silence. Then Heather's voice again, a little softer. She needs help, real help. Somewhere with professionals. Before something terrible happens. Somewhere. That word stung. Not home. Not with us. Just somewhere. I didn't say anything that night. I didn't sleep either. I just laid there staring at the ceiling, wondering if this was how women disappeared. Not with a scream, but with a suggestion. The next morning, while putting away linens, I noticed the corner of a small spiral notebook sticking out from beneath the bath towels. Something told me not to ignore it. It was blue, smelled like lavender and ballpoint ink, and it wasn't mine. I opened the first page. Feb 11. Swap the labels on sugar and salt. Leave as is for 3 days. Feb 13. Delete her calendar reminder for Jacob's birthday. Feb 15. Switch stove knob to high before she turns it on. I stopped breathing. I flipped through the pages, each entry more detailed than the last. There were dates, actions, even projected reactions. If she panics, comfort her. If she denies, don't argue. Jacob tends to believe her when emotional. Keep tone neutral. It wasn't a notebook. It was a script. And Mama was the main character in a show I didn't audition for. Heather had been setting traps, staging forgetfulness, engineering concern, crafting a version of me so fragile. Even I was starting to believe it. Sweetheart, I sat on the bathroom floor for what felt like hours. Not crying, not angry, just still. Because the worst kind of betrayal is the one that makes you question yourself. I could have confronted her that day, slammed the book on the table, demanded answers. But Mama's learned something with age. Justice doesn't always come in volume. Sometimes it comes in patience. So I took pictures of every page, slid the notebook back exactly where it was, and I waited. That week, I let her play her part. She caught me putting pepper in the sugar jar. She noticed I'd missed my appointment. She whispered to Jacob while making tea like I wasn't even there. But now I wasn't the woman being questioned. I was the woman watching them perform. And I had my moment planned. One evening, I cooked Jacob's favorite stew, the one I used to make every year for his birthday. Except this time, I left out the time. Heather seized the chance. She's forgetting recipes now. Jacob, please tell me you see what's happening. I handed him my recipe card. Time, double underlined. He looked at me, then her, then the card. That was the first time I saw doubt crack through his concern. The next day I went for a walk, and when I returned, the notebook was gone. Heather had moved it, but it didn't matter. That night, as the house settled into silence, I heard muffled voices outside my room. Jacob. I found it, he said, low, shaken. Heather's reply came cold. You weren't supposed to. And then nothing but footsteps. I didn't speak of it, didn't confront them, didn't ask for apology or explanation. Because, sweetheart, when truth finds its own way to the surface, you don't have to shout to be heard. I poured myself a cup of tea, sat by the window, and felt the wind shift. Because the story was never about Evelyn losing her mind. It was about Evelyn reclaiming her clarity. I didn't call Jacob, didn't say I know what Heather's done, didn't throw the notebook on the table like a bomb. No, sweetheart. Because Mama knows when someone builds a story so carefully, the loudest thing you can do is refuse to play your part. So I smiled through breakfast. Let Heather pour my tea. Let her speak to me like I was 7 instead of 70. I let her keep acting while I quietly rewrote the ending. The stew was the moment I chose, Jacob's favorite. I'd made it every year on his birthday since he was 4. Only this time I left out the time. Not by mistake, by design. Heather caught it fast. She forgot the main spice. She whispered just loud enough. Jacob, I think we really need to consider. I reached into my apron pocket, pulled out the index card with the recipe. The word time circled in red ink. I placed it beside his bowl. Then I looked at Jacob, not desperate, not angry, just still. He didn't speak, but I saw it, the hesitation, the pause that wasn't there before. I'd planted a seed, and like all seeds, it needed silence to grow. So I let a few more things slip. I asked where the car keys were, even though I'd moved them back to the hook that morning. I forgot that Jacob's meeting was canceled, then handed him the voicemail I'd saved in my phone. And Heather? She grew impatient. One afternoon, I left the sugar canister open just enough. I watched from the hallway as she unscrewed the lid, dumped the salt inside, then turned and froze. Because Jacob was standing at the kitchen door, he didn't say a word. He just looked at her, and she couldn't look back. That, sweetheart, was the moment the truth walked in on a lie uninvited. The next morning, the notebook was gone from the linen closet. Heather had moved it, which meant she knew I knew. But it didn't matter. I had the photos. I had the proof. And more than that, I had clarity. I started reclaiming small things. I relabeled the spice jars quietly, correctly. I put my own calendar back on the fridge. I took the keys down from where she'd hidden them and went on a short drive. Heather said nothing, but I saw it in her eyes. The control she built was slipping. Not because I shouted, but because I no longer believed her version of me. One afternoon, I caught Jacob staring at me. I was in the garden pruning roses. He stood in the doorway a long while holding his phone, but not scrolling. He finally said, Mom. How long have you known? I didn't ask what he meant. I just said long enough. He looked away. His voice cracked. I didn't want to believe she'd do that. Then softer. I didn't want to believe I let it happen. I didn't hug him, didn't rush to forgive. Because forgiveness, darling, is not a transaction. It's a garden, and you don't plant in poisoned soil. So I said, when you're ready to listen, Jacob, I'll be here. Then I turned back to the roses. Because Mama had already planted something new, not just in the ground, but in herself. And this time, no one would prune it for her. Dear Jacob, I never thought I'd have to write a second letter, but maybe some stories don't end with the truth being discovered. Maybe they begin there. You asked me why I didn't tell you sooner, why I didn't come running with the evidence, why I let you keep believing something that wasn't real. And the answer, sweetheart, is simple. Because sometimes people only hear the truth when the lie becomes too heavy to carry. I watched you struggle between love and loyalty, between the woman who raised you and the woman you chose. And for a while, I hated how easily you believed her, how quickly you let go of the me you knew. But now, I see it more clearly. It wasn't about belief, it was about fear. You were afraid, weren't you? Afraid that if I really was slipping, you'd lose the one constant you'd always had. Afraid of being helpless. Afraid that protecting me might mean watching me fade. And Heather, she offered you certainty, a problem to solve, a reason that didn't require grief. I don't hate her, Jacob. I pity her. I don't know what Heather was running from. Maybe a childhood without warmth. Maybe a mother who forgot her too soon. Or maybe she just didn't know how to love someone who had already loved you longer than she ever could. Because whatever made her need that kind of control must have come from a place of deep, silent fear. And Mama knows a thing or two about fear. But Mama also knows this. You don't fight darkness by dimming someone else's light. You asked me once when you were 9, if someone says sorry, does that mean everything is okay? I told you then. It means they know something wasn't. So no, Jacob, everything's not okay. Not yet. But you apologized. And maybe that's where we begin, not where we left off, but where we meet again. Not as mother and boy, but as two people finally seeing each other with honest eyes. I'm still here, still Evelyn, still your mama, and I still have room in my heart. But I no longer wait in the shadows of your doubt. I've come home to myself. Take your time, sweetheart. But if one day you find your way back, I'll be out in the garden with the rosemary and thyme. I won't wait by the door, but I'll leave the gate unlocked. Planting peace, not proof. Love always. Mama! You know, sweetheart, Mama doesn't need everyone to believe her. Just one person, herself. For too long, I measured my worth in how others saw me, in how calm my voice was, in how often I apologized for things I didn't even do. But now I understand something deep in my bones. Some truths don't need permission to exist. Just like rosemary doesn't ask the garden to bloom. It simply does, in its own time, with its own scent. Rooted in the ground it knows it belongs to. I walk slower now, but not because I'm lost. I walk slow because I've stopped running from my own story. I sip tea without checking the stove 3 times. I read entire books without needing someone to explain them to me. I laugh, really laugh, without watching for someone's approval. And the best part, I remember everything. The day Jacob was born, the way his curls stuck to his forehead when he cried, the note he once left me after he scraped his knee. Mama, I'm brave, because you are. I remember who I am, not because someone confirmed it, but because I never truly forgot. So tonight, sweetheart, if you're sitting in a quiet room, holding your own story between trembling hands, Mama wants you to hear this. You are not crazy. You are not fading. You are not too much. You are the chapter they tried to close, but you hold the pen. And if your heart is too full for silence tonight, if you've been carrying your truth like a secret wound, you can write to me. Yes, darling. Write to Mama. Send your story to. The email is in the video description, sweetheart. Because maybe, just maybe, the story you've never dared to tell will be the light another woman needs to keep going. Every mother has a truth she never told. What's yours? This space is sacred. This silence is shared. And this healing is ours. So plant your truth, sweetheart. Let it bloom.